The night I brought Eli home, I ruined my engagement. Not because I cheated, at least not yet, but because compassion, apparently, was the most unforgivable sin in New York's glittering upper class. I still remember the look on my fiancé's face, Hunter's lips pressed tight, his jaw trembling as he stared at the shivering boy standing behind me. Eli looked like a ghost someone had thrown out of a burning house. Wet hair clinging to his forehead, bruised cheek, clothes barely covering his trembling frame. "He's 19, I told Hunter. "His family kicked him out. He has nowhere to go." Hunter didn't blink. "And that's your problem now?" I wanted to tell him that it wasn't supposed to be, that I'd found Eli half-conscious near the subway station, and I couldn't just leave him there. But something about the way Hunter said it, like compassion was contamination, made me stop. That was the night I learned love in our world came with rules. Eli barely spoke for days. He slept curled up on the couch, flinching at every sound, whispering apologies for taking up space. I bought him clean clothes, cooked for him, tried to make the silence less heavy. He didn't thank me, not in words, but one morning, I found the kitchen spotless, my coffee brewed, and a small sticky note beside it. "Thank you for not asking why." That one line hit harder than any confession. Hunter, of course, couldn't handle it. He stopped coming home, started spending nights at business dinners. When he did show up, he brought an air of polished cruelty. "You think you can save everyone, Noah?" he said one night, his voice sharp like glass. "That kid's using you. They all do." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The way Eli froze at every knock on the door told me enough. Someone had broken him long before I ever met him. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Hunter walked in early, found Eli sitting at my piano, playing something soft and fragile, his fingers trembling on every key. I was standing behind him, watching quietly, my hand resting on the back of the chair. To anyone else, it might have looked innocent. But to a man like Hunter, raised on appearances and pride, it looked like betrayal. "Get out," he said to Eli. Eli froze. "I'm sorry, I didn't." "Now." I stepped forward. "Hunter, stop. He's done nothing wrong." Hunter turned on me then, eyes blazing with disbelief. "You're protecting him? In my house?" "No," I said softly. "In our house." He laughed, but it came out cracked. "Not anymore." Eli left that night, even though I begged him to stay. He thanked me again, this time with words. "You've done enough," he said. "You'll lose everything if you keep helping me." I watched him disappear into the rain, carrying a duffel bag too big for his thin shoulders. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that letting him go was mercy. But mercy has a way of haunting you. Weeks passed. My engagement fell apart in slow motion, calls unanswered, texts ignored, invitations revoked. Hunter didn't yell. He just withdrew, like watching a flower wilt and pretending it wasn't dying. My friends took his side. My mother said, "You always loved broken things, Noah. Maybe you like fixing them because you can't fix yourself." Maybe she was right. Then one Sunday morning I saw Eli again. He was at a shelter in Brooklyn, serving food with quiet precision, sleeves rolled up, smile small but real. He looked healthier, still fragile, but lighter somehow. When our eyes met, he froze. Then he laughed softly. "You found me." "I wasn't looking," I lied. "Yes, you were," he said, and for the first time, there was no fear in his voice. That was how it began, the part one didn't plan. We started spending time together again. Coffee in the mornings, long walks through Prospect Park. He told me about his past. The father who called him a mistake. The mother who never looked him in the eyes after he came out. The brother who hit him just to fix him. And I listened, not as a savior, but as someone who finally understood what it meant to be seen. One night, under the streetlights, he said quietly, "I don't think I know how to be loved." I replied, "Then let's learn together." He smiled, and for once, it reached his eyes. Of course, the world doesn't forgive easily. Rumors spread about the charity case I was keeping. Hunter's friends whispered. My company questioned my professionalism. I tried to ignore it, but it got harder every day. The last straw came when I was called into the boardroom by my boss. He looked uncomfortable. Noah, you're good at what you do, but your personal life's distracting. He didn't say gay scandal, but he didn't need to. That night, I sat on my apartment balcony, watching the city lights blur into a mess of gold and blue. Eli came up behind me, quietly as always, and placed his hand on mine. You don't have to keep choosing me, he said. I turned to him. But I will. He looked like he wanted to cry. You'll lose everything. I smiled, though it hurt. Then maybe it was never really mine. 2 months later, I resigned. Sold the apartment. Booked 2 tickets on way to Paris, then Vietnam, then wherever the map stopped looking familiar. When the plane took off, Eli gripped my hand like he still didn't believe this was real. You sure about this? He asked. I looked out the window at the lights fading beneath us. I've never been more sure of anything. He leaned against me, closing his eyes. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was running toward something. Back in New York, Hunter called once. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. I saw the news. You left. Guess you finally chose your stray. He paused, his breath uneven. I miss you, Noah. I just didn't know how to love you without breaking something. I deleted it. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd finally learned that love isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about choosing what makes you whole. On the balcony of a tiny apartment in Saigon, Eli leaned against me, pointing to the skyline. Do you think they'll ever understand? Maybe, I said. But by then, it won't matter. He smiled. You think we deserve this? I looked at him, really looked at him, the boy who once flinched at kindness, now laughing softly in the night breeze. Yes, I said. We do. The stars above us shimmered faintly, reflected in his eyes. Somewhere, the past was still burning, but we were no longer standing in the fire. The first morning in Saigon, Eli woke before sunrise. I found him sitting by the window, staring at the streets below as the city yawned awake. Vendors rolled out their carts. Children chased stray dogs through narrow alleys. The air smelled of coffee and humidity, of something raw and alive. He didn't hear me come up behind him. His shoulders were relaxed for once, the tension in his neck gone. I placed a cup of black coffee beside him. He looked up, eyes still drowsy. You're up early, I said. He smiled faintly. Couldn't sleep. The city sounds different here. Better or worse? Different, he said again. Like it's forgiving. We didn't talk much after that. Sometimes silence said more than words ever could. Our apartment was small, barely enough for 2 people. The paint peeled near the ceiling. The fan made a dying noise when it turned. But it was ours. There were no rules, no accusations. No one watching us through glass walls of judgment. For the first few weeks, we lived simply. I worked remotely for a small American firm that didn't care about my personal life. Eli started helping a local art teacher who ran workshops for street kids. He'd come home covered in paint, smiling like he'd discovered sunlight for the first time. I loved seeing him that way, messy, alive, unguarded. But healing is never linear. Some nights, I'd wake to find him sitting on the floor, knees drawn to his chest, staring at nothing. When I touched his shoulder, he'd flinch just slightly, but enough to make my heart ache. It's nothing, he'd whisper. Just ghosts. I didn't press him. We both had ghosts. One afternoon, we took a trip to the Mekong Delta. A local guide rode us through a maze of mangroves and floating houses. Eli sat at the front of the boat, sunlight flickering across his face. He was sketching again. He did that often now, capturing moments before they disappeared. Draw me, I teased. He looked over his shoulder. You'd be too easy. Too easy. He smirked. You look like someone who's trying not to smile. He wasn't wrong. Later, when we stopped for lunch at a riverside cafe, he handed me the sketchbook. On the page, he'd drawn me sitting exactly as I was, shirt rolled up, expression caught between sadness and serenity. But what caught me off guard was the detail. He'd drawn my hand reaching toward his, almost touching but not quite. I didn't pose like that, I said. I know, he replied softly, but that's how it feels. I didn't answer. I just looked at him. realizing that maybe he saw me more clearly than I'd ever seen myself. It was around that time I started getting messages from Hunter. First, just a few. Are you safe? Where are you? Then they turned bitter. You're really living with him? I hope you're happy throwing your life away. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Part of me wanted to yell, to tell him how little he'd understood. Another part, the quiet, exhausted part, just wanted peace. Eli saw the messages once, when my phone buzzed during dinner. His expression darkened, not with jealousy, but worry. You should answer, he said quietly. To what? To end it properly. Otherwise it'll follow you here. He was right, and I hated that he was. That night, after Eli fell asleep, I went out to the balcony. The streets were quieter than usual. Only the hum of motorbikes and the chirp of night insects filled the air. I typed a message slowly, deleting and rewriting it more times than I'd admit. Hunter, I hope you're well. I'm not coming back. I don't hate you, but I can't be the person you needed me to be. I found peace here not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. I hesitated before sending it. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I hit send and placed the phone face down on the table. When I turned, Eli was standing at the doorway, blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Did you tell him? Yes, I said. He nodded, stepped closer, and whispered, Good. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. We grew into a rhythm, small moments that built a life. Morning walks by the river, late night talks on the balcony, arguments about who forgot to buy rice, laughter over burnt eggs. One evening, as rain poured down outside, Eli asked, Do you ever regret leaving? America, I asked. He shook his head. Everything. I thought about a job, the apartment, the engagement ring now sitting somewhere in a drawer. No, I said finally. I regret not leaving sooner. Eli smiled, but there was something in his eyes, something that looked like guilt. Hey, I said softly. Whatever you're thinking, stop. He looked away. It's just, I keep wondering if I ruined your life. You didn't ruin it, I said. You reminded me it was mine. He blinked, his throat working as he swallowed. Then, quietly, he said, No one's ever said something like that to me. I brushed his hair from his forehead, smiling. Then I guess I'll keep saying it until you believe me. Months passed. The monsoon season came and went. Eli's art began to draw attention, tourists buying his street sketches, locals asking him to teach their kids. For the first time, he had something that was his own. One day, a gallery owner from Ho Chi Minh City reached out, offering him a small exhibition. Eli was terrified. I'm not ready, he said. I'm not good enough. I laughed. Eli, you draw feelings. That's what art is supposed to do. He frowned. You really think people want to see my feelings? Yes, I said. Because they're real. He hesitated, then nodded. Then, will you come? Always. The night of the exhibition, he was a nervous wreck. I helped him set up, framing each sketch with care. Most were scenes from our life here, markets, children playing, rainy streets, but a few were more personal. Silhouettes, two figures standing apart, sometimes close enough to touch, sometimes separated by lines of shadow. As guests arrived, I watched Eli transform. At first shy, then slowly glowing under the warm lights and curious questions. People loved his work, his sincerity, his perspective. And somewhere between the laughter and the clinking of glasses, I realized I'd fallen completely in love, not with the boy I'd saved, but with the man he'd become. Later that night, after everyone left, we stood together in the empty gallery. He turned to me. You look proud. I am. Why? Because you didn't need saving after all. He smiled, then took my hand boldly, this time. Maybe I did, but not in the way I thought. We stayed like that, hand in hand, until the lights dimmed and the city outside began to quiet. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. An envelope arrived from New York, no return address. Just my name written in neat handwriting I knew too well. Hunter's. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single letter. Noah, I saw an article about Eli's exhibition. You look happy. I'm not writing to ruin that. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you, and for how blind I was to the person you really are. You deserved someone who saw you for that. Take care of him. And yourself. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and put it in the drawer, not out of bitterness, but gratitude. Some wounds don't heal through revenge. They heal through acknowledgement. Eli found me sitting there, staring at nothing. Bad news? He asked. No, I said. Just closure. He nodded slowly. You okay? I smiled. Yeah, I think I am. That night we went for a walk along the river. Lanterns floated on the water, small sparks of color drifting gently away. Eli bought 2 paper lanterns, handed me one. Make a wish, he said. I thought for a moment. You first. He closed his eyes. I wish we never forget what it felt like to start over. When he opened them again, his lashes were wet not from tears, but from the mist rising off the river. I smiled. Then I wish we keep finding reasons to begin again. We placed our lanterns in the water. They drifted side by side, glowing faintly in the dark, until they disappeared around the bend. He slipped his fingers through mine. You know, he said softly, I used to think love was something people like me didn't get to keep. And now I think maybe love isn't something you keep, he said. It's something you build, every day, until it's too big to fall apart. I looked at him then, this boy who once trembled under the weight of kindness, now standing taller than ever. And I realized he wasn't my rescue. He was my reason. It's strange how peace can feel like an echo. You don't notice it when it arrives, only when it's been missing for too long. 2 years had passed since we left America. 2 years since that rainy night when I watched New York vanish beneath a blanket of clouds, and everything familiar disappeared with it. Now our lives unfolded gently. After Vietnam, we spent months traveling Bali, Florence, Athens. Eventually, we settled in a small coastal town in Portugal, where the ocean smelled like new beginnings. I taught English at a community college. Eli painted murals for cafes and sold prints to tourists. We didn't have much money, but we had mornings filled with laughter, long walks by the sea, and the quiet comfort of knowing we were finally safe together. One autumn afternoon, I came home to find Eli sitting on the floor, surrounded by canvases. The sun spilled through the window, painting streaks of gold across his hair. He was lost in thought, brush frozen midair. Hey, I said softly, dropping my bag. You look like you're solving world peace. He looked up, blinking as if he'd just remembered I existed. No, just thinking about color. Color. He nodded toward a half-finished painting, 2 figures standing on a pier at dusk, one slightly behind the other. The sky burned with oranges and deep blues. I can't get the light right, he said. It's supposed to feel like it's ending, but not sad. I knelt beside him. Like goodbye that isn't really goodbye. He turned to me, smiling. Exactly. That was the thing about Eli. He could make art out of emotion, out of the spaces between words. Life had settled into something steady, almost gentle, until the phone call came. It was a Thursday evening. The air smelled like rain. I answered without checking the number, expecting it to be one of my students. But the voice on the other end froze me. Noah? It's Hunter. My heart stuttered. I hadn't heard his voice in years, calm, deep, too familiar. He hesitated. I wouldn't call unless I had to. Your mother's been looking for you. She's sick. The word hung there, heavy. Cancer. The kind that doesn't wait. For a long moment I couldn't speak. I cut off most of my old life completely. But family isn't something that disappears just because you turn away. When? I finally managed. She asked for you, he said quietly. I think she wants to make peace. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the sound of my past knocking again. That night I told Eli. He didn't say much at first, just nodded, his expression unreadable. Then, after a moment, he said, You should go. I frowned. You mean we should go? He shook his head. No. This is something you need to face on your own. Eli, he reached for my hand. Noah, you gave me the courage to stop running. Maybe it's your turn. I wanted to argue, to tell him I didn't want to go anywhere without him. But deep down, I knew he was right. When I landed in New York, it felt like walking into a dream I'd outgrown. The streets were the same, but smaller somehow. The air colder. At the hospital, my mother looked frail but sharp-eyed as ever. When she saw me, something inside her softened. "Noah," she whispered, voice thin but steady. "You came." "I did," I said, sitting beside her. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. "I heard about the boy. Eli, right?" "Yes." She looked at me for a long time, her eyes glassy. "I never understood," she said finally, "why you'd throw everything away for him." I swallowed hard. "Because he's the only thing that ever made me feel like I wasn't broken." She closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. "Then I hope you keep him." That was the closest thing to approval I'd ever get from her. And it was enough. She passed away 2 weeks later. Peacefully, they said. At the funeral, Hunter came. He looked older, quieter, a shadow of the man I used to know. After the service, we stood outside under gray skies. "I didn't expect to see you," I said. He shrugged. "Didn't expect to come." We shared a long silence. Then he said, "You seem different." "I am." He gave a small nod. "You made the right choice, Noah. I just wasn't brave enough to follow you." There was no bitterness left between us, just the quiet understanding of people who once tried to love each other and failed. Before we parted, he said something that stayed with me. "You know, I used to think you left because of him. But now I realize you left because of you." He was right. When I finally returned to Portugal, Eli was waiting at the airport. The moment I saw him, the exhaustion, the grief, the weight of the trip, all of it cracked open. He didn't say a word, just walked up to me and pulled me into his arms. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of paint and soap and home. "I missed you," he whispered. "I missed me too," I said against his skin. He laughed softly, and just like that, everything that had been heavy began to lift. That winter, Eli's art was selected for a traveling exhibition across Europe. He didn't believe it at first, thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't. His work, full of quiet resilience, of love that grew from pain, had found its way to people's hearts. When I told him he should go, he shook his head. "Not without you." So we packed our lives again. We crossed borders, one country after another: Berlin, Prague, Florence. Each place added a layer to our story. We weren't running anymore. We were living. In Florence, on our last night before heading home, Eli took me to a rooftop overlooking the Arno River. Lanterns floated in the water below, the city humming softly with distant music. He turned to me, a nervous smile tugging at his lips. "There's something I've been meaning to do," he said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, nothing fancy, just simple and honest, like him. "I know we don't do ceremonies," he said quietly, "and I know we've already chosen each other 100 times. But maybe we can choose again, this time on purpose." My throat tightened. "Eli," he looked up at me, eyes glistening. "You don't have to say anything. Just if you wear it, I'll know you still want this." I didn't hesitate. I slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled him into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and years of surviving. The city lights blurred around us. For the first time in forever, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Months later, back on the beach in Portugal, life had become simple again. The world still spun with chaos and noise, but ours was a small, quiet orbit of two. Eli's paintings now hung in cafes and galleries. I'd started writing again, essays, small stories, nothing grand. Sometimes he'd read them and draw the scenes I described. It was our way of speaking to each other through art. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Eli called out from the porch. "Hey, you remember the first night we met?" "How could I forget?" I said, smiling. "You were half frozen and half terrified." He chuckled. "You looked like you wanted to save the world." "I only wanted to save you." He leaned his head on my shoulder. "You did." We stood there for a long time, watching the horizon burn gold. Later that night, lying in bed, He whispered, "Do you think love changes?" "Yes," I said. "It becomes quieter, but stronger." He turned toward me, tracing lazy circles on my chest. "Then promise me something. Anything. When it gets quiet. Don't stop listening." I smiled. "Never. Years from now, maybe we'll be old men with wrinkled hands and tired smiles, still sitting by the same ocean, still laughing at the same stupid jokes. Maybe the world will finally learn to understand people like us, or maybe it won't. But by then, it won't matter, because we built something that didn't need permission to exist. And that, more than anything, feels like freedom." The morning after a storm, I walked down to the beach alone. The sand was cool beneath my feet. Waves curled gently at the shore, whispering secrets only the sea could keep. Eli joined me a few minutes later, sketchbook in hand. He started to draw the ocean, the light, maybe me. When he finished, he held it up. It was us standing together at the edge of the water, the world stretching endlessly ahead. He smiled. "Looks like we made it." I looked at the drawing, then at him. "We're still making it." And in that moment, with the wind in our hair and the sky breaking open with sunlight, I realized something simple and profound. Love isn't about where you start. It's about who you choose to keep walking with when everything else falls away. That day, as the tide washed over our feet, I reached for his hand. He squeezed it once, and we stayed like that, two silhouettes against a bright, forgiving horizon, finally beautifully home. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.